I'm gonna tell you this slow, because that's how it really happened. Not with screaming first. Not with fists. It started with a feeling. The kind you get when you walk into your own kitchen and it smells wrong. Same walls, same floors, but something in the air tells you you're no longer welcome. I'm Margaret Hale, 72 years old, widowed, and I built that mansion brick by brick alongside my late husband, Frank. Maybe not with my hands, but with my sacrifices. Night shifts. Missed vacations. Raising our boy while Frank worked himself into an early grave. Every tile in that house had a memory tied to my bones. And yet somehow, I was standing there like a guest. My son, Evan, used to call that house home. Lately, he called it the property. That word alone should have warned me. Folks don't say property when love is still in the room. I'd been moved into the guest wing weeks earlier. Just temporary, Mom, Evan said, rubbing his temple like I was the headache. Claire needs more space. You know how newlyweds are. Claire. My daughter-in-law. Always smiling. Always watching. The kind of woman who doesn't raise her voice because she doesn't need to. She lets other people do the dirty work for her. That morning, I heard raised voices from the main living room. Evan's voice was sharp. Claire's was low and calm, like she was managing inventory instead of a marriage. I stayed where I was. Old women learn when to listen through walls. Then the front door opened. My brother Ray stepped inside like the house still belonged to family. Tall, grey-bearded, shoulders straight even after a lifetime of hard labor and harder truths. He hadn't been there since Frank's funeral. He looked around, frowned, then turned to me. "Why aren't you in the master bedroom?" he asked. "Why you camped out like a visitor?" Before I could answer, Evan jumped in. Too fast. Too loud. That house belongs to my wife now. Not our house. Not we are handling things. Belongs? The word hit the floor hard. I felt something inside me pull tight, like a stitch ripping. Ray didn't blink. He just tilted his head slightly, studying Evan the way you study a stranger who's getting a little too comfortable. I opened my mouth, but Evan kept going. He always did that, talked over me when he knew he was wrong. "If Mom goes near that side of the house again," he said, chest puffed out, "I'll hit her again." Again. That word didn't echo. It dropped. Heavy. Permanent. The room went silent in that way silence gets when it's deciding what comes next. I didn't look at Evan. I looked at Ray. My brother's jaw tightened, just a hair. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides, but I knew that look. I'd seen it once before, when a man at the factory tried to shove me during a labor dispute back in '92. Ray hadn't yelled then either. He'd just stepped forward and ended it. "Say that again," Ray said quietly. Claire finally spoke up. Soft. Measured. "He's just emotional," she said. "We've all been under stress. You know how families get." Families. That word coming out of her mouth felt like theft. Ray turned his eyes to her, and I swear, she shrank without moving. "You live here?" Ray asked. Claire smiled. "I do now." Ray nodded once, slow. "On paper." Evan stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Ray said, still calm, "I haven't seen a deed. And I haven't seen my sister lay a hand on a pen." My heart started pounding. Because Ray wasn't guessing. He knew. Frank had planned for this. He always did. People thought my husband was quiet. What he was prepared. Evan laughed. A sharp, nervous sound. You think this is about paperwork, he snapped. This is about respect. No, Ray said. This is about control. I finally found my voice. It shook, but it came out. I never signed anything. Claire's smile froze for half a second. Just half. Enough? Ray turned to me. You sure about that, Maggie? I nodded. They put papers in front of me once. I was medicated. I told them no. Evan's face changed. Not angry anymore. Worried. Ray exhaled through his nose. All right then. He reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. Didn't dial yet. Just held it. I'm gonna ask you one last thing, Ray said, eyes locked on Evan. Did you lay hands on my sister? Evan hesitated. That was the answer. Claire stepped closer to him. Too close. Protective. Strategic. It was a misunderstanding, she said. Margaret gets confused sometimes. That's when something inside me hardened. I wasn't confused. I remembered the shove. The wall against my back. The way Evan wouldn't meet my eyes afterward. The way Claire closed the door and said, "You shouldn't provoke him." Ray looked at me again. I nodded once. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't threaten. He simply said, "Pack a bag, Maggie. You're not sleeping here tonight." Evan scoffed. You don't get to decide that. Ray finally smiled, not warm, not kind. Oh, son, he said, I haven't even started deciding yet. And that was the moment I realized something important. This wasn't going to end with apologies. It was going to end with consequences. I followed Ray toward the door, my legs shaking, my heart racing, and behind us, I could feel Claire watching, calculating. Because she knew something had shifted. And whatever plan she thought she'd locked down inside my own house had just cracked wide open. I didn't pack much. Funny how a whole life can fit into one overnight bag when fear is doing the choosing. A sweater. My pills. Frank's old watch I kept by the bed even though it didn't run anymore. I stood in that guest room, my guest room, like I was some distant cousin, and realized how quietly they'd pushed me out. Ray waited by the door. He didn't rush me. He never did. That was always his way, let people show you exactly who they are before you decide what to do with them. As I walked past the living room, I felt Claire's eyes burn into my back. Evan stood stiff beside her, arms crossed, jaw clenched like he was holding back something ugly. I wanted to say something. Wanted to remind him of scraped knees I'd kissed better, nights I stayed up when he was sick, years I put him before myself without a second thought. But I didn't. Because sometimes silence is the last boundary you've got left. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have. Or maybe that was just the shock settling in. Ray opened the passenger door of his truck for me like I was fragile. I hated that feeling, but I was grateful too. As he drove, the headlights cut through the dark, and the house disappeared behind us. My house. The mansion Frank and I dreamed about when we were broke and young and sure love was enough to fix anything. Turns out, love without limits just teaches people how far they can push you. Tell me everything, Ray said after a few miles. His voice was steady, but his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. So I did. I told him about the papers they slid in front of me after my surgery. How Evan said it was just a formality. How Claire poured me tea and stood behind my chair while I read, correcting my glasses angle, touching my shoulder like she owned it. I told him about the shove. About the wall. About how Evan cried afterward, but still didn't apologize. Ray didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he nodded slowly. All right, he said. Then we do this clean. That word, clean, meant something coming. We pulled up to Ray's place, a modest brick house that smelled like coffee and old books. Safe. Solid. The kind of place that doesn't pretend to be anything it's not. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evan's face when he said again. Like it was nothing. Like I was furniture that could be shoved aside. Around 3 a.m., I heard Ray moving around the kitchen. Papers. Printer noise. The low murmur of someone planning instead of panicking. In the morning, he slid a mug across the table to me. Black coffee. No sugar. Same way Frank used to drink it. I called Michael, Ray said. My heart skipped. Your lawyer friend. My brother-in-law, he corrected. And the best estate attorney in the county. I wrapped my hands around the mug. What did you tell him? The truth, Ray said. And enough to make him angry. That afternoon, Michael arrived with a briefcase and a look that said this wasn't his first family war, but it might be his most personal. He laid documents across the table like cards in a high-stakes game. The house is still legally yours, he said plainly. No valid transfer. No notarized consent. No witnesses that matter. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. But, he continued, they've been acting like it isn't. That changes things. What about the assault? Ray asked. Michael's eyes flicked to me, then back to Ray. If she wants to pursue it, we can. Medical records help. Witnesses help more. Witnesses. I thought of the house staff. The way the maid avoided my eyes. The way she flinched whenever Evan raised his voice. Michael leaned back. Before we move, I want leverage. Something that makes them stop pretending they are in control. Ray smiled thinly. Oh, they think they are. That evening, my phone buzzed. Evan's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. A minute later, a text. You embarrassed us. You didn't have to involve Uncle Ray. I stared at the words. No apology. No concern. Just reputation. Claire followed up right after. We need to talk like adults. This doesn't have to get ugly. That one almost made me laugh. Almost. Ray read the messages and shook his head. They are scared, he said. Which means they are gonna make mistakes. The next morning, Michael filed an emergency motion. Temporary protection order. Property access restriction. Documentation request. By noon, Claire's parents were calling. By evening, Evan had left 3 voicemails, his voice swinging between rage and panic like a loose door. But the one thing that stuck with me most. The maid called Ray's house that night. She wouldn't give her name. Her voice shook. I saw things, she whispered. Things they did to her. I don't want trouble, but I can't lie anymore. Ray looked at me across the room. And in that moment, I knew the truth was finally stepping out of the shadows. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just unavoidable. And somewhere across town, in my house, Claire was probably realizing that the walls she thought protected her were about to start closing in. The maid showed up the next morning just after sunrise. Ray opened the door, and there she was, small woman, maybe mid-40s, hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. She kept glancing over her shoulder like Evan might come roaring around the corner any second. "I can't stay long," she said. "They told me never to speak to you. That alone told me everything." Ray stepped aside and let her in. "You're safe here," he said. "Say what you need to say." She sat on the edge of the couch, didn't lean back, didn't get comfortable. People who've been scared too long don't relax just because the door's locked. "My name's Rosa," she said quietly. "I clean the house 3 days a week." "Or?" "I did." I nodded. "You saw things," I said gently. She swallowed. "Yes, She told us how Claire started giving her instructions early on. Not cleaning instructions, household control instructions. Which rooms were off limits to me. Which meals I was not supposed to have. How she was told to report if I wandered into the master bedroom or office. She said you forget things, Rosa said, eyes down. That you get confused. She said it was for your own good. Ray's jaw tightened. Rosa kept going. How Evan's temper got worse every month. How he slammed doors. Threw things. How once, after an argument, she saw me come out of the hallway holding my arm, face pale, eyes glassy. She asked me not to say anything, Rosa whispered. She said families handle things privately. I laughed then. Not loud. Not funny. Just a sharp breath of disbelief. That's what abusers always say, I muttered. Michael arrived mid-statement, quiet as a shadow. He listened, took notes, didn't interrupt. When Rosa finished, he slid a notepad toward her. If you're willing to sign a sworn statement, he said, this changes everything. Rosa hesitated. Will they know it was me? Michael didn't lie. Eventually. Yes. She closed her eyes. Took a breath. Then nodded. I already lost my job, she said. I won't lose my soul too. That afternoon, Michael filed the affidavit. By evening, the legal tone shifted. Fast. Claire's attorney called first. Polite? Too polite. Then Evans. Less polite. More frantic. Ray answered that call on speaker. You're blowing this way out of proportion, Evans said. She's confused. She fell. That maid's lying. Michael leaned toward the phone. Your mother's medical records don't show a fall consistent with the injury, he said calmly. They show blunt force trauma. Silence. Then Evan snapped, you don't know what she's like behind closed doors. Ray laughed. Not amused. Boy, I've known her longer than you've been breathing. The call ended quick after that. That night, I couldn't sleep again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was clarity. The kind that burns a little on the way down. I realized something sitting there in Ray's quiet guest room. They didn't just want my house. They wanted me small. Weak. Quiet. Out of the way. And I had let it happen longer than I should have. The next day, the court granted a temporary order. Evan and Claire were barred from altering anything in the house. No selling. No transferring. No moving assets. Law enforcement notified. That's when Claire panicked. She showed up at Ray's place unannounced. I heard her before I saw her. Heels sharp on concrete. Voice tight but controlled. I just want to talk, she said, hands raised like this was all some misunderstanding. Ray didn't let her in. He stood in the doorway like a wall. "You've said enough," he told her. She looked past him, straight at me. Her eyes weren't soft now. They were calculating. "You're tearing your family apart," she said. "Is that what you want at your age?" I stepped forward. My hands didn't shake this time. "No," I said. "I'm putting it back together. Without you running it." Her face hardened. "You think the court's going to side with you? An old woman with emotions and bruises." That sentence right there. That's when she lost. Because Michael stepped up beside me and said, "Actually, Mrs. Carter, the court tends to side with evidence." Claire's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at it, and her face drained. She didn't argue anymore. Just turned and walked away fast, heels stumbling like the ground had shifted under her. That evening, Michael came back with more documents. Messages. Bank activity. Recorded voicemails. "Your daughter-in-law's been pushing Evan for months," he said. Pressure. Ultimatums. Threats of leaving if he didn't take control. I closed my eyes. I could hear Evan's voice again. "She just wants what's best for us." No. She wanted what was mine. Michael looked at me. "The judge is going to want to hear from her." Under oath. I opened my eyes. "Good," I said. Because once lies get dragged into daylight, they don't survive long. And somewhere across town, Claire was probably realizing something else too. That the story she'd been whispering in private was about to be read out loud. Courtrooms have a smell. Old wood. Paper. Cold air that makes everyone sit up straighter than they feel inside. I'd been in one before, years ago, settling a contractor dispute with Frank. Back then, we'd walked out together, hands linked, laughing about how stiff everything felt. This time, I walked in alone. Ray sat on one side of me. Michael on the other. Across the aisle, Evan sat stiff in his chair, jaw tight, eyes darting anywhere but my face. Claire wasn't beside him. That told me more than any lawyer could. She came in last. Hair perfect. Makeup flawless. Soft blue dress that said harmless. She glanced around the room like she owned the air, then took her seat with Evan's attorney, not his arm, not his hand. Just the chair. That's when I knew she was already stepping away. The judge called the case. Michael stood, calm as a lake before a storm, and laid it out plain. Unauthorized property control. Coercion. Physical assault. Medical records. Witness testimony. When Rosa's statement was read aloud, Evan shifted in his seat. Claire didn't. Not yet. Then Michael did something smart. He asked to recall Claire as a witness. Her attorney leaned in, whispering fast. Claire nodded once, lips pressed tight. She took the stand with her shoulders back, chin lifted. Same posture she used in my kitchen, when she corrected how I folded towels. The prosecutor started gentle. Always do. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "you've described your relationship with your mother-in-law as strained but loving. Is that correct?" "Yes," Claire said sweetly. "I tried to keep the peace." "And you deny encouraging conflict between your husband and his mother?" "That's right." The prosecutor nodded, then lifted a folder. "These are text messages recovered from Mr. Carter's phone. Messages you sent." Claire stiffened. Just a hair. The prosecutor read the first one aloud. "You're the man of the house. You can't let her keep running things like you're a child. Did you send this?" "Yes," Claire said. But it was taken out of context. Another message. If you don't take control soon, I'm done living under your mom. Her lawyer shifted. Evan's head dropped. Did you send that one too? Claire swallowed. Yes. The room felt tight. Like everyone was holding the same breath. The prosecutor leaned in. Within days of these messages, your husband forced his mother out of her bedroom and struck her. Do you deny that timeline? Claire's voice hardened. I never told him to hit her. No, the prosecutor agreed calmly. But you tied his worth, his marriage, and his future to how much control he took from his mother. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, her smile was gone. When Rosa was called next, the room shifted again. The maid's voice shook, but she didn't waver. She told the truth plain. About instructions. About watching me shrink. About fear. Evan stared at the floor. Claire stared straight ahead. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was tired, but firm. The court finds credible evidence of coercion and intimidation, she said. Any alleged transfer of property under such conditions is invalid. My heart pounded so loud I barely heard the rest. But then I heard the word that mattered most. Vacate. All non-owners to leave the property within 48 hours. Law enforcement to supervise. Claire's mother gasped. Her father's jaw clenched. Claire didn't move. She didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead like she was doing math in her head and coming up short. Outside the courtroom, Evan finally looked at me. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said, voice cracking. I looked at my son. Really looked. This is exactly how far it was always going, I said quietly. That afternoon, the officers escorted them out of my house. I stood on the walkway. Not on the porch. I wasn't ready for that yet. Boxes moved. Doors opened and shut. Silence thick as fog. Claire looked at me once while loading the car. No apology. No anger. Just a flat understanding that her game was over. When the last car pulled away, an officer turned to me. Property's clear. Clear. But the story wasn't finished yet. Because that night, sitting in the quiet of a house that felt wounded but alive, Michael pulled out one more envelope. My husband's handwriting. And what was inside it was about to change how I saw everything that came before. That house gets quiet in a way you don't expect after a storm. Not peaceful. Not yet. More like it's holding its breath. I stood in the foyer long after the patrol cars rolled away, my hand still resting on the banister Frank polished every Sunday morning. The echo of footsteps was gone. Claire's perfume had already started to fade. The walls looked the same, but something heavy had finally lifted off them. Michael cleared his throat behind me. There's one more thing, he said. Lawyers always say that like they are offering you dessert. But I knew better. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small, worn envelope. Not legal paper. Not official. Just old stationery, with my name written across the front. Frank's handwriting. My knees went soft. I was told to give you this if things ever went bad, Michael said gently. He didn't want it read unless you needed it. Needed it. I took the envelope like it might shatter. The edges were soft, folded and unfolded 100 times. Frank must have carried it around before he tucked it away. That thought alone cracked something open in my chest. Michael stepped back. I'll be in the kitchen. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch where Frank used to nap with the TV on low. The medals were back on the mantel now, right where they belonged. I stared at them for a long second, then slid my finger under the flap. Inside was one sheet of paper. No typing. No lawyer language. Just him. Emily. If you're reading this, it means I wasn't there to stop something I saw coming. I read it in his voice. Clear. Steady. The same voice that talked me down when our son was born screaming like the world owed him something. I love our boy. But I've seen a hunger growing in him that love alone won't fix. Entitlement looks small at first. Then it grows teeth. My throat burned. You always give more than you should. You protect even when it costs you. I'm asking you, don't protect him from consequences if he forgets how to treat you. I pressed the paper to my chest for a second, then forced myself to keep reading. The clause wasn't punishment. It was protection. For you. I needed something stronger than my words when I wasn't here. That's when the tears came. Quiet at first. Then ugly. The kind that shake your ribs and leave salt on your lips. Frank had known. He'd seen it before I did. At the bottom, one last line. Do not choose guilt over peace. I didn't build this life, so you could bleed inside it. I folded the letter slowly and placed it beside his medals. That's when Michael's phone buzzed. He came back in, face careful. Too careful. The jail called, he said. Evan's asking to see you. Of course he was. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked through every room like I was meeting my own house for the first time. No locked doors. No whispered conversations behind my back. Just me and the echo of choices finally made. The next morning, I put on clean clothes and drove to the jail alone. The glass between us felt thicker than any wall in that mansion. Evan looked smaller in orange. Not like my son. Like a boy who finally realized the world wasn't going to bend. I messed up, he said fast. Claire's gone. Her parents won't answer. I lost everything. I watched him closely. You didn't lose everything, I said. You lost control. His eyes filled. Can you help me? Once, that question would have folded me in half. This time, I shook my head. I can love you, I said. But I won't save you from what you did. When I stood to leave, he pressed his hand to the glass. Mom, don't leave me like this. I paused. Just once. I didn't leave, I said quietly. You pushed me. I walked out without looking back. That evening, I stood at my front door, key in hand. My key. No fear. No permission needed. The lock turned smooth. And as the door opened, I realized something that scared me more than anything before. Peace feels unfamiliar when you've lived in survival too long. And learning how to live again was going to be its own kind of battle. The first night alone in that house didn't feel victorious. It felt quiet in a way that made my ears ring. I locked the door out of habit, then stood there staring at the deadbolt like it might suddenly argue with me. Nobody was going to bang on it. Nobody was going to demand explanations. Nobody was going to remind me I was in the way. Still, my shoulders stayed up around my ears like I was bracing for impact. That's the thing nobody tells you about surviving something ugly. When the danger leaves, your body doesn't believe it right away. I walked through the mansion slow, touching walls, light switches, door frames. Same house I'd lived in for decades, but now it felt like neutral ground again instead of enemy territory. The guest room key was still in my pocket. I pulled it out, looked at it, then set it on the kitchen counter. I didn't need it anymore. That night, I slept in my old bedroom for the first time in months. Same bed. Same headboard. Same window Frank used to crack open even in winter because he liked real air. I lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for footsteps that never came. When I finally slept, I dreamed of nothing. No fear. No shouting. Just black, quiet rest. In the morning, sunlight poured through the curtains like it was proud of itself. I sat up slow, half expecting my heart to start racing like it had been doing for weeks. It didn't. That scared me more than the fear ever did. Michael came by mid-morning with coffee and a stack of paperwork. He set it down and watched me carefully, like I might shatter if he spoke too loud. "You okay?" he asked. I took a sip. Real coffee. Not poisoned. Not rushed. Just hot and honest. "I don't know yet," I said. "But I'm standing." He smiled a little. "That counts." We went over logistics. Temporary restraining order. Security cameras. Financial locks. Every sentence sounded like a foreign language mixed with relief. I signed things with a steady hand this time. Nobody hovering. Nobody rushing me. When we finished, Michael hesitated. "There's something else," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "If this is another envelope, I swear." He chuckled. "No. It's Evan." Of course it was. He's asking about rehab options. Anger management. Counseling. He wants you to know he's trying. I looked out the window at the front yard. The grass needed trimming. The roses needed water. Life things. "That's good," I said. Michael waited. "I didn't say I was going," I added. He nodded. "I wouldn't expect you to." After he left, I did something I hadn't done in months. I invited someone over. Not family. Not lawyers. My neighbor, Ruth. She showed up with banana bread and a face full of questions she didn't ask. She just hugged me hard and said, "You look lighter." We sat at my kitchen table like old times. I told her some of it. Not all. She didn't need every bruise to understand the picture. "You staying?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm home." That afternoon, I found myself cleaning out the hall closet. Not because it needed it, but because my hands needed something to do. That's when I found Evan's old high school jacket stuffed in the back. Football patches. Mud stains I never could wash out. I held it for a long minute. Then I folded it and put it in a donation bag. Not out of anger. Out of honesty. That boy didn't live here anymore. A week later, the call came. Evan again. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom," he said. Quieter this time. No edge. "I got into a program. Court approved. I start Monday." "I'm glad," I said. Silence stretched. Do you think we'll ever be okay?" he asked. That question used to own me. I took a breath. "I think you can get better. And I think I can heal. Whether that road meets again depends on what you do when nobody's watching." He swallowed. "That's fair." After we hung up, my hands shook. Not from fear. From letting go of the idea that it was my job to fix him. That weekend, I hosted dinner. Just a few people. Ruth? Her sister. Michael stopped by. The house filled with normal noise. Forks clinking. Laughter. Somebody spilling wine and nobody yelling about it. At one point, I caught myself smiling for no reason. That's when it hit me. I wasn't rebuilding the house. I was rebuilding myself. And that's harder. Because there's no blueprint for learning who you are after you stop surviving. That night, as I locked up and turned off the lights, I stood in the doorway of my bedroom again. Same spot. Same floor. But this time, I didn't feel small. I felt cautious. Strong. Awake. And I knew something deep in my bones. The real consequences of Evan's choices weren't finished yet. The real test of my strength hadn't arrived. And the next time my past came knocking, I wasn't going to answer it the same way ever again. Peace doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in quiet, like it's scared you might chase it off. For the first few weeks after everything settled, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every unknown number on my phone made my stomach tighten. Every car slowing near the driveway had me peeking through the curtains like a teenager hiding a secret. Trauma doesn't clock out just because justice clocked in. I started small. Morning walks around the block. Same route Frank and I used to take before his knees gave out. The neighbors waved different now. Softer. Like they knew something had happened, but didn't need the details to respect the change. One morning, Mrs. Caldwell from 3 houses down stopped me. "I just want to say," she said quietly, "you handled yourself with strength. A lot of women wouldn't." I smiled, but inside, I corrected her. I didn't handle it with strength. I survived long enough to find it. That afternoon, I went into the study. The one Evan tried to turn into his office. I stood there staring at the desk he never paid for, the chair he used to sit in like he owned the world. I rolled the chair out. Reclaimed the space. I set up my old writing desk instead. Not for work. For memory. For letters. For me. I found myself journaling at night, not about pain, but about truth. The kind you bury when you're busy keeping everyone else comfortable. A month passed. Then the call came. Not from Evan. From Claire. Her name on my screen felt like a ghost tapping the glass. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Hello," I said. She didn't waste time. "I'm leaving him." I closed my eyes. "I figured," I said calmly. "He's angry all the time," she continued. "The program isn't fixing him fast enough. He blames me now. Says I ruined his life." I said nothing. She inhaled sharply. "I didn't know it would go this far." That's the sentence people use when they finally realize the fire burns both ways. "I didn't either," I replied. Until it did. There was a pause. Then, softer, "I thought if he took control, we'd be safe." I laughed once. Not mean. Just tired. "Control doesn't make homes," I said. "It makes cages." She didn't argue. "I'm calling because I need to know. Are you okay?" I thought about it. Really thought. "Yes," I said. "I am." She whispered, "I'm not." "I know," I answered. "And that's not something I can fix." When we hung up, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not victory. Not revenge. Just release. Weeks later, Michael invited me to court again. Not for drama. For closure. Evan stood before the judge, quieter now. Thinner. Not broken, but cracked enough to let reality in. The court ordered extended counseling. No contact with me without written consent. Continued supervision. When it was over, Evan looked at me once. Not angry. Not pleading. Just understanding. That hurt worse than the rage ever did. Back home, I did something symbolic. I changed the locks. Not because I was scared. Because I was done leaving doors open for people who didn't knock with respect. That night, I cooked Frank's favorite meal. Ate alone at the table. No guilt. No sadness. Just gratitude for a life that still belonged to me. I stood at the sink washing dishes when I caught my reflection in the window. I looked older. But stronger. The kind of strong you earn, not borrow. I realized something then. Losing a son to his own choices is a grief people don't talk about. It's not death. It's distance. And distance hurts longer. But staying would have killed me slowly. And I finally loved myself enough to walk away from that. A few days later, I found Evan's childhood photo album in a box. I sat on the floor flipping through pages. First steps. Missing teeth. Graduation smiles. I didn't cry. I closed it gently and placed it back on the shelf. Some memories are meant to stay memories. Not obligations. That evening, I stood on the porch watching the sun drop behind my trees. The house glowed warm behind me. Safe. Mine. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the future to hurt me. I was ready for it. Because if the past ever tried to rewrite itself again, I'd already learned how to say no without shaking. And the final chapter of this story wasn't about what they took from me. It was about what I refused to give away ever again. People think the end of a story like this comes with fireworks. Court wins. Doors slamming. Somebody crying on the porch while karma smiles real big. That ain't how it really ends. It ends quiet. It ends ordinary. And that's how you know it's real. Weeks after everything settled, I woke up one morning and realized I hadn't checked my phone all night. No missed calls. No threats. No guilt texts dressed up as apologies. Just silence. The good kind. I made coffee slow, standing barefoot in my kitchen, watching steam curl up like it had nowhere else to be. For months, every cup of coffee came with tension. Who poured it? Who watched me drink it? What it meant? Now it was just coffee again. That was my first win. I started fixing things around the house myself. Not because I couldn't hire someone, but because I wanted my hands back in my life. I patched a loose tile. Rehung a crooked picture. Cleaned out the garage Frank always swore he'd organize next weekend. There's something healing about touching the life you almost lost. One afternoon, I found a box labeled old taxes and junk. Inside were birthday cards Evan wrote when he was little. Misspelled words. Crooked hearts. Best mom ever written like a promise. I sat on the concrete floor and let myself feel it. Not blame. Not shame. Just truth. I loved him. I still do. But love without boundaries is just permission for pain. That realization didn't come all at once. It settled in slow, like bones knitting back together after a break. Michael checked in weekly, then monthly. Less lawyer, more brother again. One day he showed up without papers, just takeout and bad jokes. We ate on the back porch like kids sneaking dinner outside. You proud of yourself? He asked. I shrugged. I'm alive. That's a start. He smiled. Frank would have been proud. That one hit me deep. I planted a tree in the backyard for Frank. Nothing fancy. Just something strong that'll outlive me. I pressed dirt around the roots with my bare hands and told him out loud, I'm okay now. Saying it made it real. Evan wrote me letters from the program. Long ones at first. Then shorter. Less excuses. More accountability. I didn't answer right away. Sometimes I didn't answer at all. That was another lesson. You don't owe access just because someone shares your blood. One letter stood out. It didn't ask for money. Didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't ask for anything. It just said, I'm starting to understand what I did. And I'm sorry it took losing you to see it. I folded it and put it in my nightstand. Not a reunion. Not closure. Just progress. And progress doesn't rush. Neighbors stopped whispering. Life moved on. The story wasn't fresh gossip anymore. It was just something that happened, like storms always do. One evening, I hosted dinner again. Full table this time. Laughter bouncing off walls that once heard shouting. Someone spilled wine and we laughed instead of flinching. I caught myself thinking, this is what safety feels like. Not control. Not dominance. Just peace. Late that night, after everyone left, I walked through the house turning off lights. Same path I used to walk scared, listening for raised voices. This time, my steps were steady. In my bedroom, I opened the window like Frank used to. Cool air rolled in. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself think about the woman I was before all this. The one who made excuses. The one who stayed quiet to keep the peace. The one who thought love meant endurance. I don't judge her. She did the best she could with what she knew. But I'm not her anymore. Strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like walking away without screaming. Like locking a door and not apologizing. Like choosing yourself when the world trained you not to. If there's one thing I want you to hear, really hear, it's this. Being a mother does not mean being a sacrifice altar. Age does not make you disposable. Kindness does not mean weakness. And family does not get a free pass to hurt you. I still miss my son. I always will. But I don't miss the fear. I don't miss the silence. I don't miss shrinking myself to fit inside someone else's ego. This house is mine. This life is mine. And every breath I take in peace is something nobody can steal back. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you're older, tired, scared, or feeling pushed aside, please hear me. It's not too late to choose yourself. And if this story meant something to you, if it helped you feel less alone, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Stick around. There are more stories like this. More truth. More reminders that your life still matters. Because if an old woman like me can take her power back, so can you.